Well, again, we'll start at the top. It's wonderful to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into your life as a founder, an author, a
Likewise.
visionary. So thank you.
Likewise. Awesome.
So let's get into it. I want to begin with 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing everything about our lives. How did you get through that time period, and how has it changed the way that you approach life today?
I think that, for me, and I think other people can resonate with this. I think with COVID, maybe not necessarily during COVID, but maybe kind of in the aftermath and the kind of reflection of what transpired during COVID, we were kind of given a foray into, I think, a lot of the kind of underlying control mechanisms of society, if you will. I think that we kind of realized that we kind of sanctify authority figures, right? We kind of assume that because they're sitting behind a nice desk with a well-structured studio and lights and chiseled features and a nice suit or whatever, that this person is telling you the truth, right? Like you're getting all the right information, you're getting everything you're supposed to hear, and I think what happened with COVID was people kind of had time on their hands, right? And they started kind of like peeling back the layers of this narrative of these stories, and I think that it kind of in many ways kind of woke people up. And it certainly, I've been on a kind of a journey of awakening for quite some time. I think it became more acute relatively recently, but I think it brought kind of more people into the fold, into questioning their reality, really, the kind of like the fundamental nature of what's going on in their everyday lives, who they are, again, are sanctifying authority to, who they are believing, who they are looking to for insight on how to live their everyday life, right? And we're talking about something really kind of important, right? We're talking about that the health and well-being of yourself, obviously, but of your family, of your children,
Yeah.
right? And you're being told that it's okay to jab your kid when they're 5 years old or 3 years old, and there was no proper testing done. I mean, we're kind of seeing all of this stuff. In fact, we're now being told that the vaccine never worked and that the masks were fake, or that they were never really going to do anything. So you're kind of people kind of go on tangents with the stuff, conspiracy theories and things of that nature. But I think kind of taking a step back and looking at actually what happened, maybe not from a cause, more of an effect vantage point, right? You kind of are brought a new sort of reality is presents itself where again you have to start looking deeper. You have to start taking the initiative. And hopefully, I think what people realize, and I certainly did, that a lot of this stuff that we deem to be inaccessible or that we deem to be solely sort of in the hands of, again, authority figures, no matter what their credentials are, no matter
Sure.
where they sit in government, we have sort of the autonomous ability, if you will, to discern, to make decisions for ourselves, as long as we're given complete facts, right? So I think for me, this was a big shift. This was a kind of big pivot. And in many reasons, I think, it gave me kind of the strength and courage to push forth with my effort, which is really kind of in the same vein. It's in, awakening people, waking people up to a reality on a deep level, but also on a peripheral level that they don't really know exists, that they weren't aware of to begin with.
I love how you put all of that because we do have to ask these questions. It's like any good theologian has to question everything, right? And I think that's the thing. That's the existential crossroad we came with COVID, which is why do we believe this doctor that walks in the room with the suit and all of this fanciness? We wait for 30 minutes. He's in there for 5. What the hell gives, right? It's like it's all of these little things that we think about. Like even with COVID, like I'm gonna walk around this whole time with the mask on and I go into a restaurant and take it off while I'm ingesting all this fluid and food that's going to come out in particles and then put it back on. Like none of it, so many things. And I'm not conspiratorially throwing things down and saying this is all just a bunch of malarkey, but we have to question all of these things that are a part of the inverted pyramid of every day we wake up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we don't recognize, and this again, this is about a kind of a kind of a new orientation, which is a big part of what I'm trying to do as well. Kind of allowing people to reorient, to look at themselves as, or actually, give people tools to recognize their sovereignty, recognize the power that they possess, or recognize that in truth they are just as able if they're willing to kind of do the work and to look into things. But absolutely, and you were ostracized
Uh-huh.
for questioning. You were cast as again, a conspiracy theorist. In many ways, kind of like what you're seeing with people who are against the war in Israel. You're an anti-Semite if you don't agree with a mass murdering of people, no matter kind of what, whether you're pro-Israel or not. The facts are the facts, right? I mean, when that number of people are being murdered and killed, whether it's a result of a war or not, you have a right to question that, or not even agree. You have a right to not agree with it. You have a right to disagree with war in general, right? It was really, I think, an example, an illustration of kind of herd mentality, of um, of of again ostracizing people who were thinking critically, who were questioning, who weren't just kind of willing to go along with the program.
Which is that whole John and Yoko idea that, they got kind of immunity from being famous, but they were against all war. Anything that was going to be violent, that Gandhian notion of there's other ways of being rational with human beings instead of being irrational and taking out all these innocent people that had nothing to do with it. It's kind of like the government shutdown right now. Like all of the people that are going to suffer the most are the ones that need it the most, you know? So, um, it's wild. So the key to what you're saying is it's all about awakening within. And I'm curious if a 12-year-old at career day was to ask you right now what you do for a living, how would you quantify and qualify what you do every day?
It's difficult. I can reflect on what I used to do, but what I do now is, in truth, I try to. I guess I would tell them that I'm an author and I'm a visionary, right? I'm looking to, again, provide information that's been removed from the mainstream narratives, that's been removed from the general kind of consciousness, and give it to people so that they can make complete determinations. I'm not trying to be dogmatic in what I'm doing,
Sure.
but I believe that if you're given the full story, if you're given the different angles, if you're given a newfound perspective, this is really where critical thought can take place, because you can look at all of the pieces and you can say, listen, I thought this, but maybe it's this way. And if it's this way, maybe something else is that way, right? Like, and this isn't, again, I get very metaphysical because I think it requires an in-depth sort of understanding, but even kind of like very peripheral stuff where, like, we were talking about war before, the war in Iraq, right? Like, we went there, we killed millions of people. There weren't weapons of mass destruction. Like, um, but we're just going about our daily lives,
Yep.
right? We weren't given all the information, and we destroyed people's families for generations, and we incited conflict in a region unnecessarily, and the military industrial complex made a boatload of money, and we were footing the bill as taxpayers because it costs trillions of dollars to form these rules. I mean, like, this should be relevant, but again, it's just everybody is so caught up in the rat race. They have more important things to think about, right? So I would say that I am, again, an author and a visionary, and somebody who is looking to provide in-depth information because I have studied this stuff in university. I've worked in the real world, right? I'm not sitting um, in my parents' basement, right? I worked on Wall Street for close to 20 years. I founded companies, I sold companies, I built companies. This stuff, the whole point is that this stuff is should be part of the everyday human consciousness, the way that people look at themselves and the world around them. And we have an inherited structure, we have an inherited construct that we're not necessarily aware of, we're not conscious of, but it impacts how we go out into our everyday lives. It impacts how we look at ourselves, our relationship with ourselves, with other people, with our jobs, with everything. We don't realize it because we're brought into systems. And yeah, so that's how I could best kind of explain it. I don't know if the 12-year-old would appreciate that, but that's kind of how I would explain it.
They'll remember it and they will later on, that's for sure. You have to be around for a while.
Right.
So let me ask you this. When you were a kid, are you from New York originally or you're from Boston, correct?
I'm originally from outside of Boston, yeah.
So let me ask you a question. What did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream gig?
Like an astronaut,
Yeah,
something like that, something kind of run of the mill,
that makes sense.
like the typical program, wink, wink.
That's right.
Police officer,
Yeah.
astronaut, like, yeah.
So, what led you to this point? You talked about being on Wall Street. You've talked about having different incarnations of being successful in business. What got you to a point? Because at the end of the day, anybody that's making money, that's successful, can just stay in their lane and do it and live their lives. But to me, you're taking a risk. Not a bad risk, but you're just taking a risk because you're putting yourself out there to have people think. What was this existential crossroad that you hit that made you make this change?
Sure. I think that going into this profession, and I think that again, professions in general are sort of painted with broad strokes. I think that as a society, we have to avoid doing that in general, right? The janitor isn't less of a person because they're a janitor. They're still a human being. The person working on Wall Street isn't necessarily, a sinister conspirer, pulling strings and manipulating society and drinking the blood of, like this is kind of like crazy talk, obviously. Um, and everybody kind of goes through their own trials and tribulations. It's obviously on a relative basis, given their circumstance, given their where they grew up in the world. I entered this profession full sort of well knowing that I didn't necessarily want to do it, but I had the ambition. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to follow the path that we're sort of told in this um, kind of like Western hegemonic capitalist dominated kind of paradigm, right? Where we're told that success looks like making a lot of money. We are kind of again hypnotized through social media, through television, through Hollywood, what success looks like. It's about having a nice car. It's about being able to experience freedom through monetary accomplishment, kind of a thing, or through financial accomplishment. And I kind of swallowed. I kind of drank the Kool-Aid. I swallowed it, and I went through my life, and I was just kind of like chipping away at myself. And I obviously I didn't like the day to day. And I kind of like grinned and bared it for, close to 20 years. Not just that, not just kind of the daily sort of painstaking work doing what I hated to make money, but my relationships deteriorated. My closest connections started taking on a sort of utility-based framework. I wasn't seeing my kids. My marriage dissolved, right? And I kind of had an existential crisis. And then on top of that, I took a big risk. I started my own hedge fund, and it didn't do well. It wasn't doing well, and I kind of said to myself like, well, what the heck is like, what's the deal? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to feel successful. I'm supposed to feel satisfied. I'm supposed to feel nourished. But the practical matter was that I wasn't, and that I was deteriorating internally, and that I was kind of again to your characterization. I kind of reached this existential crossroad, and it kind of propelled me to question everything, and in doing so on the back of, again, my studies at university. I was a philosophy and economic theory major. I've always been kind of interested in systems and how ideology and value systems construct our reality before this exercise. And I just had so much, kind of information and knowledge and wisdom. And I just felt like I wanted to, as crazy as it sounds in this day and age, but I really wanted to impart this onto the world, onto other people, and share with them my perspective, share with them my understanding, so as in many ways to prevent them from taking the short-sighted approach to life that I did, so as to prevent them from myopically focusing on certain things. Again, to give them a deeper perspective, a deeper understanding of who they are in the world around them and how the world around them impacts who they are. Because in truth, and people don't realize it, but en masse, we live from the external inward. This is how most people occupy their consciousness. We need to live from the internal outward. We need to have a grounding, a constitution, and from that place go out into the world. If we don't have that, and most people don't, because the societies, it's my position that most of them are constructed this way, metaphysically, unconsciously. Other people believe that it's conspiratorial, but I just kind of try to focus on the facts. Most of us allow the external world to dictate our actions. And when we operate through an egoic mind, when we operate through habit and reaction, and this becomes the entirety of our life, we're not only severing ourselves, or not only fragmenting ourselves, but we're missing the whole point about things. The whole point isn't about, for example, quickly, it's not about, making that ton of money, right? It's like, once I have this amount of money, everything's gonna be fine, and we live for tomorrow. We sacrifice our day. This isn't a new revelation here, but the point is like this is kind of like a commonplace understanding, easy way to digest what I'm saying. We're missing the whole point. The point of life is about the experience. It's about the climb. We don't want to look at it that way, but this is when you look back, when you get there, you don't make that money, or you don't close that account, or you don't have your artwork placed in that gallery, whatever your circumstance might be. It's not That's not like what it's about. And you just kind of like sit back and well, that was crazy. You don't just like sit back and watch it happen. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like everything's great now. It's about the climb. It's about that whole process, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of missed in a lot of people's understanding of themselves and the world around them, or even their place in their own reality.
So let me ask you this. In this modern world, if you're not one of those that's been sucked into the vapid vortex of what we see happening in DC that radiates out to everybody, how do you remain hopeful? How do you remain okay and radiant to keep these ideas going to help the next generation?
Because it's my belief that that we don't get change through policy alone. We get real change. We get real grounded change, and this is substantiated just historically speak from actual facts, right? We get change when people change, when people's understanding of themselves change, when people's understanding of the nature of their reality changes. When people have, and in truth, this is just the way it is. When people have the right perspective, or at least an accurate perspective of themselves and the world around them, um, they will see that the way that they've been living their life is kind of half-mast. It's not going to give them. It's not going to allow us as a society. You haven't let me get into this stuff yet, but we haven't. It hasn't allowed us as a society to truly evolve. Right? We need to kind of get the bigger picture. We need to understand even more on an iterative basis how we are impacted by the world around us. How this newfound understanding and perspective will then reverberate into the world. This is how things really change. People talk about capitalism, socialism, communism, right? Like these buzzwords. They all result in the same thing. If the underlying consciousness doesn't shift, right? If the foundation of these systems don't shift, because they're all just tools, and we don't realize it, but we embody the consciousness of these systems. It's like going to a theater and rearranging the theater seats, but it's the same show,
Yep.
right? I mean, this is kind of really what's going on. So it's important to have a government in place that stands for the people, for the benefit of society truly. Right now, we don't. We have a government in place that serves corporate interests, oligarchs, globalist agendas, right? Again, not conspiratorial. That's just the way we have structured our economy. It's to
Yep.
serve a globalist economy. We saw the repercussions of that with what happened in the with our middle class. We gutted our middle class. We had opioid epidemics, et cetera, et cetera. So we are willing to, in many ways, sacrifice humanity for these sanctified systems, for corporations, for these dominant institutions, when in truth, the whole purpose of these systems, the whole purpose of these institutions is to serve humanity. Right now, humanity is serving those systems. People don't realize it, but that's what's happening. There needs to be a real shift. Again, people need to be made aware of what their indoctrination was, what their programming was, and more importantly, what our societal programming was, what our societal indoctrination was. And people are disconnected from this information. And when you provide them, again, with accurate information, complete truth, and understanding, we see what happens. Because, back to what we were talking about previously, with COVID, we see the shifts, we see what takes place. I'm gonna not let you ask the next question and tell you, kind of give you perspective. But for example, right, like if you look at organized religion, this isn't a poo-poo on organized religion. There's benefits to it. However, if you look at the original construction of organized religion, the whole point of it, the reason that it became so pervasive, we are, thousands of years ago, before we institutionalized religion, people understood there to be a direct connection with the divine. There is a divine intelligence that exists in the world. You'd have to be blind not to notice it. Everything there's a rhythm. The tides ebb and flow. We breathe in oxygen. We exhale. Again, a natural rhythm. Our heartbeats. We inhale oxygen, and our carbon dioxide feeds vegetation and trees. We are part. We are not living in nature. We are nature experiencing itself in this unique form. There are many ecosystems that we are connected to, right? Uh, and this manifests itself across multiple planes, both psychologically, spiritually, also biologically, whatever it might be. Uh, Organized religion was structured to sever that connection, that individual connection. That's why nobody lives their life thinking about this on a daily basis. We have sanctified disconnection. We have severed our true connection from source or whatever it might be, right? Religion also structured hierarchy where we looked at God as above, man below, and then nature beneath both. But in truth, that's just not what's going on. You can look at quantum physics, what we're learning there. You can look at neuroscience, what we're learning there. Where it's all on the same playing field. So if you told somebody, again, we talk back to this kind of authority idea. If you told somebody you are God or you are source experiencing itself, would you give up your agency? Would you give up your autonomy to other people? Or would you realize that, oh, wow, you are just as powerful.
Yeah.
You are just as important, right? So people don't kind of recognize the nuance there, but it's teaching you things psychologically. This parlays into, again, you know, school, we look to an authority figure to dictate to us. We digest information, we regurgitate it. We value in education, we tell a child that their value, their grade, their gold star, they're rewarded for their performance, their ability to regurgitate digested information. There's no critical thinking. There's no how does it make you feel. The arts and science, the arts are kind of pushed to the side. It's a focus on quantitative, scientific-based rigor. We stifle the imagination of a child. He sits in the class or he or she in the classroom for 7 hours, right? We've created a construct, a performative-based, utility-based construct, which is pegged to the way we look at the world. Because when you go out of college, you look to find value in performance, in the utility you bring to the table. We've kind of mechanized humanity. And then we do it to serve industry, we do it to serve economy. And people, not that they do it and they're controlling us, but we do it because we have to, because we've sanctified, again, the systems and the institutions. This is what we value. So we become part of the system. Our identity becomes performative. Our identity is stripped of who we truly are, right? So again, it's about exposing these ecosystems. It's about showing people that they aren't aware of kind of what's moving them and pushing and pulling them. If you gave people this kind of insight, right? I think that you get a perspective shift because you start people will start pivoting and looking at again their place in the world around them, how they treat somebody, how they treat nature. Do they want to buy a $10 t-shirt knowing that it's made in a sweatshop in Bangladesh? Do they want to be buying food that's based on artificial flavors that has carcinogens? I mean, just small stuff. But again, it's through knowledge, it's through complete understanding and deep perspective that you get society to shift. That was a lot. I appreciate you letting me vomit there a little bit. But
No, you're
it's
good.
again, it's about giving people a complete perspective and letting them see the mechanics behind the scenes.
So let me ask you this: is the man behind these ideas? I'm curious. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
My perception of me has definitely shifted. I think that again, I think that as most of us do, because we're kind of quote unquote programmed that way. I really looked at myself as my job, my title, my bank account, right? This is how I was identifying. I think it would certainly make sense given sort of how I'm speaking about these topics, because everyone has to have kind of a personal perspective to give insight or wisdom, right? It's all through the individual lens. And I think that through that approach to life, through that perspective, I recognized immediately, or maybe not fast enough, but in a real acute manner, the shortfall there, the kind of like joke was on me there, and most people I don't think experience a kind of realization that I did in such an acute fashion, so they kind of just coast. They sleepwalk through life. They don't see what's kind of happening and what it can do to you on a subtle level. Um, and that has shifted for me. Again, to answer your question you asked before, you're putting yourself out there. Before, I wouldn't be doing this because I cared too much, right? I was operating from kind of an egoic mind. Maybe I'm sounding a little bit unhinged or out of touch, but again, I don't care. I know what the facts are. I know how things work. Um, and I've had obviously, deep discourse around these topics with academics, um, with theologians across all religions. So like I'm fully confident kind of what I'm trying to say. And again, I look at myself more now as sort of somebody who has been able to identify who I truly am. I have a complete understanding of my true sense of self. And this is really kind of what, when you boil it down, this is really kind of what my effort's about. It's about giving people the ability to find their true self, to not identify with the external world, with the external systems, with their job, with the amount of money they make, not be pushed and pulled through their repetitive desires, right? Like all of these sort of externalities, and to let them come kind of sit with themselves and then see themselves for what they are, and then again live from the inside out. This is the most empowering thing you can give somebody, because it doesn't let them, it prevents them from allowing themselves to be manipulated by the outside world. And I don't, again, this isn't conspiratorial. This is about manipulating in the fact that not letting the external world dictate your actions unconsciously.
Absolutely. So I think we've really opened the door here to your book before we forget. If anyone wants to get a copy, if they want to reach out, they want to delve into your world, where's the best place for them to go?
It's available on Amazon right now. It's available, I believe now, or at least shortly, in brick and mortar stores, Barnes and Nobles. Uh, what are the other bit Borders? Somebody's went out of business, I think. Like even I think even like Target. It's
Yeah.
available globally. I have an audiobook that I'm finishing up. I was told that it would be better if I read the book, which is not my most enjoyable thing to do, to be honest with you. But I think it might resonate more with people if I'm reading it.
Yeah.
So that's available. It made it made the bestseller chart, number one bestseller in two categories on Amazon, which is kind of cool.
It's awesome.
Which I think further substantiates sort of the message, and I think it resonates with people because oftentimes, given the complexity of these discussions, it's important to kind of have something to grab onto and reread and allow it to kind of digest and ruminate. So that's where you can find the book. My website, theaaronscott.com. I offer private sessions, speaking engagements. I speak globally. So that's the best way to kind of get information on myself and the book.
Man, I love what you're doing. Anytime I run into cats like you that are putting the idea out and helping people get to that place of being just more aware, it's so essential. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for taking a minute out today. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.